Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope everybody's doing great today. So we are going to be finishing up the Bespoke fountain pen that we were working on last week. I got all the milling done. We did have an unfortunate accident with the section. I still don't really exactly know what happened there. I'm leaning towards I didn't actually get the drilling all the way through and kind of popped it off the end when I switched it. But I got something else, so we'll have to see how this goes, I guess, with this pen. I'm not 100% sure yet, but we'll see once we turn it up. And we can. The beauty is we can always switch the section out. If you break a section or have an issue with one, it's not that hard to swap it out with whatever down the road if you don't like the looks of it or whatever it is. So let's go to the overhead overhead view. So I got my blanks ready. We kind of talked about these. These are the Turner's Warehouse mandrels, and one thing that you'll probably want to do, and I need to talk to Chad about this, but I created a little spacer. The problem is they didn't cut a relief in the mandrel itself, and Chad was saying that he kind of likes using like little spacers. That way you can set the depth as to wherever you want. Same thing goes with, and I think it's almost more important on the cap. Like really, I almost wish they would just cut the relief in these mandrels personally. I don't really see the need to have a spacer. I don't really find a problem cutting whatever length, depth of threads in the body. I don't know. I don't find that to be a big deal. But with the cap, I don't really like having to cut deep threads. Like I'd like to, select how long I have to go, and I don't want to be reliant on how many threads are on the mandrel to dictate how many threads I put in the cap, right? So this is, I think, the ideal position. I just went ahead and cut threads in this thing to fit the mandrel. But I mean, realistically, I could take off almost probably like a 3/16 amount of these threads. And so, making your own spacers isn't a bad idea. I like the idea generally, but again, it's kind of hard to make these. I need to talk to Chad and find out what he does, how he makes these little spacers. Honestly, wood probably would have been easier. I made it out of like acrylic or HDPE or something like that. And it's not exactly fun to turn or anything like that. So I guess a wooden one, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Anyway, so just be aware of that. Or the other way that you can deal with this is on the body one, you can cut a little relief in your body threads at the top. I'd rather not have to do that personally. So I like the spacer idea, but I like the spacer idea on the cap. That way you can choose whatever you want. But here's the section that I redid. So I decided to pull out, I had a blank left over from, or it was actually half of the blank left over from the New Year's Eve blank. So it's got a little bit of fun going on. I don't know. Let's just see how this section works. And I got everything done well. On this one, I don't know. There's two things that could have gone wrong last week. Like I said, if I didn't, so when you make this would have been in the chuck, the collet chuck like this. And I did all the threading and all that stuff. The one thing I didn't do with the tenon cutter, I didn't drill out a hole for that pilot shaft thing to kind of run in there. I just left it whole. I was like, oh, let's see how this goes. So one thing that could have happened is it could have, I don't know, not having that guide cut too much or cut kind of weird. And I might have just had too thin of a part there for some reason. And then I came back and then I flipped it and I drilled out the inside. The other thing that could have happened is I may not have drilled all the way through this thing, and there was like a little bit of material. And when I put the mandrel on to test it, it might have just ripped off the little, the threads or whatever. That's kind of weird. I think it would have just stopped. I don't feel like I forced anything, so I'm not sure what happened. But on this one, I just went back and did it the normal way that I do. I drill a 6mm hole and then use the rod on the tenon cutter, and everything worked out fine. So I don't know. No clue what happened there. So let's see here. Body designed for a roller ball, for a mandrel for a body designed for a roller ball. Too wide and too long. I don't know. I haven't made a rollerball. I don't see how it would be different. I can't wrap my head around it though. I don't really know what the difference would be. It shouldn't be that different. Oh, because you've got the longer nib thing, maybe. So you don't want to drill as deep. Is your body blank just not as long as a fountain pen would be? Like, do you shorten the blank compared to a fountain pen blank for the body? I'm just curious because, like I said, I haven't made one. I just haven't really had time to sit down and kind of. I know that there can be differences. One thing that you could do is just, and I would actually, so I wouldn't change anything personally. So I'm not sure. We'll wait for your answer, but. Most roller balls are 5/16. So the drill hole is different? Is that what it is? Yeah, I wouldn't change the length. I don't know. Again, I wouldn't change the length. If anything, because I would prefer to make a pen that you could do either or with, right? So I may be going on the totally wrong direction, but I would do the whole same exact thing. And if you need to move the ink up, just put a spacer, like a spring or something in the bottom. That's what I would do probably. Yeah, I would just use a spring. I mean, that way you could make it a fountain or a rollerball instead of having to be stuck with one or the other. Personally, you might like to have the custom thing though. But it would also let you just, use the same equipment for everything. So I don't know. You'd have to talk to somebody that knows a lot more about roller balls and all that kind of stuff than me. Honestly, I don't really know that much about making these. All I've made is a simple 3-piece pen. I can get through it as long as I got my instructions, but I don't have enough time to really focus on all that stuff. There's too many details, and I'm too particular about the way that I like doing things. To just be like, oh, let me just kind of try this. I wouldn't be very happy with it. So anyway, so we're going to turn these guys up and finish this pen up today. So it should be pretty fun. One thing to note, guys, we have a discount going on the pigments. So the Color Lab pigments, all 5 colors, both sizes are 25% off right now, guys. 25, that is a huge deal. So all you got to do is go to my website, and you got to enter the code. Make sure to enter the code, Color Lab. There's the code, and here's a link to all the Color Lab pigments. If you want to pick some up, it's time to stock up. Spring is on the way. Stock up on pigments. So anyway, so I just wanted to let you guys know that. I usually reserve like the sales and stuff for the email newsletter, but I might be changing that. Because I mean, really, there's more people on like Instagram, and that's a better place to like share sales and stuff like that. But I don't know, whatever. We'll see how things go. And I like to share with you guys on YouTube too. So, we'll spread the love a little bit. So I think that's about it. So I still haven't got a switcher thing, so we're gonna have to kind of deal with camera stuff. I need to get a physical switcher thing because it's just not working. I don't know what happened. Something changed with software, I think on an update, and it just crashes. Like one of the lines in just crashes at this point. So oh yeah, if you're doing kind of one-off stuff, then I can understand that. But I mean, you got to keep in mind you don't really want to have a lot of different mandrels. That's where I would just be like, whatever, I'm just going to make it the same because I don't want to have different mandrels for every ink size or whatever. So 3/16. I'm just trying to think what you meant by the 3/16 thing. I don't know. Maybe Turners will come out with something that'll kind of help fix that problem. I wish they would come out with, it doesn't matter to me, but I kind of wish that they would come out with another section mandrel for, like right now, as far as I understand, they've got like a number 6 Yovo. I know that because that's what I have. And then I think the other one that comes in the kit, because I got the full kit. It's also like I don't know, number 6. I don't know if there's like a specific size. I don't know how that works, but there's a Bach. So one Bach size, but the thing is there's like different sizes in, as far as I understand. Bach has different sizes, and I know Yovo's got like 5, 6, and I think they got number 7 even, probably more, who knows. Like there's different sizes of nibs, and it'd be nice if there was, I mean, bare minimum, I think that number 5s are pretty popular with people. And I think there's a 7 as well for like the really fat pens. I don't know how. I know there's a lot of people that do the big ones too, but I think it's probably a little bit less. I don't know. I'd be kind of interested to see how many people. But the problem is Turner's Warehouse doesn't sell the number 5 nibs. They just do 6s, so that's why they didn't come out with it. But anyway, who knows? Single start cap mandrel. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, to be honest, you can make your own as well. I mean, you don't have to go out and buy these things. And you can do it on a wood lathe. Definitely better on a metal lathe. You just have a lot more accuracy with everything basically. But I mean, you know, all you got to do is have a tap and die. If you've got all the other stuff, especially if you're set up with the tenon cutter, and well, even if you don't have that you don't need the tenon cutter really, but if you've got the what is that thing called? The Neil's niche thing, then you know, I mean, you can make. This is a really terrible example, but I mean, before Turner's came out with the new section mandrel that's got the threads on this side and all, you know, all the stuff, and like it holds it, I would flip. You know, because back in the day, the only thing you had was one that screwed in. You didn't have any tailstock support, though, at all. And so I made this to go over the threads. And so, I mean, you know, I mean, this is a very rudimentary and not essential for anything special. But, you know, I just literally used a pen blank. And I even have threads on the other side if I needed those. So, you know, you could make your own. I know a lot of people use like Delrin, I think it is, or yeah, I think it's like Delrin material to make some mandrels. So you could do your own that way if you wanted. You could try it out at least. I mean, it's not, you know, can't hurt. It might work good enough. So yeah, Delrin. So yeah, Homerlick says Delrin. So I don't know how I prefer metal ones myself. I mean, but yeah. I don't know. Maybe give it a try. All right, so let's go over to the lathe. I think the thing is messed up, so let's see what's going on here. I got to make sure that this thing's working. Does the camera work? I don't know. So I got to look into that, like I said. Nope, it's not working. Okay. Sheesh. Here we go. Let's see here. Switch to this and then switch back. This seems to be the secret sauce right here. And then I'm going to just turn this thing off. Okay, so let's see if this is working now. As long as I don't switch them, I don't think that like, it's not going to cut out in the middle or free. It's basically what it's doing is freezing. I don't think I have to worry about that as long as I don't switch it. It's when I switch it that one of the other, whatever I'm switching from goes out. So let's start with the body. And the first thing, let's see how this thing's rolling. A little wobbly. Let's see if I can, there we go. You know, that's a little kind of a quick tip. Sometimes, guys, you might double check and just kind of reposition or retighten. If you've got, like, just because your blank's wobbling really bad Doesn't mean that the blank is out. It may be that you just didn't get the mandrel kind of set in the chuck as well as you could have, or something. And even sometimes you may have some debris in your collet, so you may take that apart. And I just did all that stuff, so I know it's not dirty in there. But you may have a little bit of debris kind of in between one of these little things in the collet. And that could kind of tweak things or do something weird. But a lot of times I find if I just kind of like twist, go in and out, or, change the position of the mandrel that I'm trying to chuck up, sometimes I can get that blank to run. This one was a little bit off, I think. I'm not surprised. But, and I don't round. I don't like true up the outside of my blanks when I do these. So they're typically never perfect. But they're, they're good enough, and it's running true on the thread. So I don't really care too much if it's, not perfect when I re-chuck it up or whatever to turn it. However, a lot of times you can get it a little bit better. So hopefully that might help out if you didn't really know that. Just kind of play with it a little bit. You might get a little bit better run. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to pop a pop a thing in the back here. That way I can get tailstock support. And I personally prefer using this method. You get a much better hold with that angle than if you just kind of poke the tip in the back of a flat blank. It just doesn't really, you're going to have to constantly keep forwarding, it's going to dig out the material. But I find that, and I think this is for two reasons. A center drill has a little tip on it, so you're kind of drilling a little hole in the center. So the tip's not like digging into material, because there's this little center drill, the little point has created a little space. So the point of the live center isn't digging into any material. It's just being held by those 60-degree angles that the cutter makes. So if you might think about that, the one issue is you do have to drill into the back of your blank. So if you're really tight on space, might be better just to use the point. But again, you're still going to be drilling, you're going to have to keep advancing that live center as you go. In most cases, it's going to kind of dig out material. All right, so let's get our thing set up there, speed it up. I got to adjust my dust collector vents so that it's not as loud as it is sometimes. Yeah, sorry about the late start today, by the way. Yesterday was kind of a crazy day, and I wasn't in the shop half the time. And I totally forgot to set up the stream yesterday. And then whenever I do that, then I'm like, oh, okay, it's Saturday, time to start the stream, and then it's not there, and I'm like, oh, whoops. So that's why we were delayed. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of get this trued up. This thing running good. Still a little bit of a wobble in the middle there. There we go. And I have some, let me get I actually have some kind of like dimensions that I like to go to. They don't have to be, I'm not like super crazy about this, but it can kind of help to have some numbers of what I'm shooting for. Now I did 14 millimeter threads on this guy, and that changes my dimensions on the pens. I need to open up the YouTube app so I can see you guys' comments. Let's do that. How about that? There we go. All right, I didn't miss anything. So I like to go for about 15 and a half. Yeah, and then I just kind of taper it down a little bit. All right, so let's check progress a little bit. David Bingham's in the house. What's happening, man? You need to get another set of calipers. Well, let's turn the power on. What the heck's going on? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. Woo! I was like, I just replaced the battery. Why is this thing dead again? It's not. It's okay. I was gonna get upset. Oh, I'm on the wrong. I do. It's funny. For some reason, I do millimeters when it comes to the dimensions. Ooh, I'm pretty close right there. Okay, so and then where are we at here? Bigger. All right. That just kind of gives me an idea of what I'm really looking at. I mean, you can kind of eyeball it, but I find my eyeballs don't work that well anymore, so. All right, that actually looks pretty decent right there. Let's see what the numbers are. I like to check the numbers. Like I said, you can eyeball it, but when I pull out the caliper, I can actually see what is the shape really looking like. Is it getting? Because you know, like it tends. I find that I tend to get more at the ends taken off, and the middle stays fatter. And part of that might be because the blank. I don't know how much of it is the angle. Like if I am moving the tool in a weird arc, or if the blank. I think the blank deflects a little bit, so it just takes off less in the middle. I don't know. We're not talking about a lot, you know, but. So that's why I kind of think like the deflection theory might be part of it. But I'm really not sure. Okay, I'm gonna quit cutting around at this thing, and we're gonna sand it up and get it going. I may need to do some sanding on the inside, I'm not sure yet, so I'm actually gonna kind of, well, it doesn't look like it's very opaque. We'll have to kind of see. I'm just gonna do my normal sanding first. And then kind of see, well, before I even do that though, I'm actually gonna measure. So I think I need about a 3.5 inch. Let's see, what is the length on these guys? Body, 3.5. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna cut off, I'm gonna do my harder sanding, like the 600 grit, my first grit. with the tailstock still engaged, but then I'm going to lop off the end, and we're just going to go and sand it without tailstock support. I just find that I put a little bit more, there's maybe more pressure on that first one when I'm really kind of sanding out the tool marks. I may put more pressure on it, so it's nice. I like the comfort of having the tailstock support, so it's not moving really. I'm not deflecting it at all. But once you get into the polishing, I'm really not putting a whole lot of pressure on that thing anyway. So I don't know if that theory matters, makes any sense. I don't know. Who knows, guys? Let's see. Chris has a question. When you decide on cap thread size, what is your thought process? Lathe buddy time. It is. I love my lathe buddy. This one needs another washing, and it's got a lot of dust in it, so I need to kind of just beat the dust out of it. When I'm deciding, so it's mainly just the looks and the feel. The 14. So the way that I mean, your body has to be a little bit bigger. I mean, technically 1 millimeter bigger. If you've got 14 millimeter threads on there, you're not going to be below that, right? So, and I don't like having a big step personally after the threads. I don't like a big kind of shoulder. It's just, to me, it feels funny and it looks kind of funny to me. So that's just a personal preference. So I tend to go with a lot of 14s because it's a decent sized pen, feels pretty good in my hand. And this is like personal. I don't sell pens either, really, so this is really, most of this is personal preference. I kind of like the looks of the 14s. But if I want something a little bit smaller, I'll go with the 13. I typically don't really go much smaller than that. You start kind of getting, I don't know, it ends up getting a bit thin, I think, for me. Again, I'm not going to leave a big shoulder, so you start getting down to that 12 millimeter diameter, or size, I guess, whatever. And I just find that I think the pen's a little bit too thin, personally. So I think this is a 13. Let me just double check this. I think these threads are 13s. Yeah. So, 13's a pretty good size. I've actually, when I made those, 14's a little bit bigger. 13 I think is kind of prime. 12 for me starts getting a little bit too thin of a pen. The other thing for me, let's see, I'm trying to think of reasons why I would do that a certain way. The other thing for me is if I'm going to go all the way down to a 12, I mean, you're turning most of the blank away at that point. I feel like you're really thinning the blank down. Because my focus is on the blanks, I mean, realistically, I could easily be making 15 millimeter pens. And I know there are certain people out there that like them, but I feel like most people even I don't think I would really love writing with a 15 millimeter. It's getting pretty thick at that point. So 14 to me, like, I'm keeping a decent amount of the blank intact. And that may or may not matter. I mean, that's kind of subjective. I just kind of find that the diameter of like the 13, 14 just kind of leaves enough of the material that I really am, or the part of the pen that I care the most about. It leaves more of that intact. I don't know. For the most part, I mean, it's just that's what I prefer kind of things. As of now, my tastes probably would change. So, I don't know. Hopefully that helped. Yeah, I tried a 12 once, and I was like, the threads. I mean, at that point, it looks like the section thread. Like the body threads. You're getting to the point where it looks like the section threads almost. I mean, that's obviously that's a 10. It's not much bigger than a section thread, and to me it just looks. I don't like it. It's just a personal. I'm like, meh. Things are not awesome when I get down to 12. 13 though, I was 14. I kind of felt like was my my wheelhouse, but then the last couple times on the stream that we did pens, I did 13s. I was like, let's try this out. I was making them more to see for like a smaller pen, and I got them done, and I was like, 13's pretty good. Like that's a pretty good size. I would, and I think that as far, I don't know, let me know if I'm wrong on this. I think 13 is actually the most popular. Would you guys agree? The folks that are making pens, maybe even selling them, so there's like, the problem is you can survey a bunch of pen makers and maybe get one answer, and get like pen users, like the customers, I guess, in that sense. And that might be a different one, but I feel like 13 is probably the most popular, even for both sides. Let me know if I'm wrong. That's an assumption. It's totally an assumption. I have no clue if that's true or not, but it seems like part of that assumption is based on, I think I've heard like probably like Chad or somebody say that those are the most popular like taps and drill, whatever tap sizes and stuff. I don't know. I'll be right back, guys. I gotta go and helps to take the water bucket. I gotta clean this water bucket out because it's funky. We don't want funky water. I don't. Might even get some new sandpapers. Really wish I had running water back in my part of the shop. That would be awesome. Get a water bucket here. Okay. We got clean water. Those sandpapers are really not that bad. One thing I want to add, this is just a random side note. So one thing you might see here. So this thing's got like some this is basically swarf, like kind of, and it's kind of probably embedded in the sandpaper. Let me put some gloves on. I'll try and see if I can wipe that off. But a lot of times people ask like, oh, how many days do I have to wait to turn my, take the blanks after I've cast them? How many days do I have to wait, full cure and all these things? And one of the reasons why I don't really recommend like the next day, probably not even like 2 days later. And it always goes back to soft, like the hardness of the blank. It's going to be softer. And the problem is what this is a result of is I was doing testing. I was doing I'm going to be coming out with a couple of new team colors, and I'm just kind of final dialing in the results, turning a couple test blanks. And what I do in that case, I don't care what if there's like scratches and stuff, that's fine. I don't really care. I just need it to be kind of polishy, somewhat. It doesn't have to be perfect. But the problem is I'm turning these things the next day. And the thing is, when you're sanding a soft blank, you're going to get like plastic, like embedding into your sandpaper, because I'm also kind of rushing. So even if I wet this and try and kind of wipe that off, some of that's coming off, but there's still some stuff. So that's basically loading up the paper. And if your paper starts loading like that, I would chuck it, because you're basically going to be sanding with like plastic, plastic on plastic, rather than like the actual sandpaper. So, in this case, I'm going to flip it here. But, if you've got a bunch of that junk, just go get a new piece of sandpaper. And again, part of the reason I brought that up is, that question of when can I turn it? You can turn a blank whenever you want. It's going to be soft. Frankly, it may turn even easier, so there's maybe, you could almost call it like an advantage. But, slow it down. But it's mainly like that sanding and the polishing is really the biggest problem. And I definitely I would wait till it's fully cured if you're doing bespoke, because you're cutting threads into these things. And throughout that curing process, and this especially goes for epoxy, if you're using epoxy, wait 7 days or whatever the full cure schedule is, wait the full cure, because the way epoxy cures, it's like a straight line. So like on day 1, it's 1/7 complete. Let's say that there's a 7-day full cure schedule. Day 1, it's going to be 1/7. Day 2, it's 2/7. Whatever whatever that percentage is, and so on and so on. 3/7, 4/7. It's a straight line curing process, whereas urethanes, which is what Alumilite Clear and Clear Slow are, it's more of a like a logarithmic maybe, or what do you call it? Where it curves up. Like it's going to cure faster the first like day, and then that curing process slowly tapers. If you're looking at like a chart, it's going to spike up and be pretty well cured, and then it kind of tapers off, right? So the first 2 days you're getting I don't know what the percentage is and all that stuff, there's factors, but Alumilite Clear Slow has a 5-day cure schedule. By like day 3, like it's pretty close. So you're probably up in like the 70-80% cured range. That's just a guess. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but like in theory, that's where it should be. So I always kind of recommend, wait a couple days at least with Alumilite. But if you're doing epoxy and you're cutting threads into it and doing all that stuff, epoxies kind of require more time to cure, because they don't spike off the bat. They just go kind of an even cure schedule day to day. So let's see. So yeah, so you guys, did anybody have any things? You've only done 13s. Yeah, but even like, yeah, but it kind of go, like I said, there's like the pen makers, and maybe you're just giving them away or whatever, gifts and things. But I mean, it's also, so there's two sides to the coin with that, where if you're a maker, you're gonna probably, I mean, most people are probably gonna pick one at least to start, see if they like it, or whatever. And just especially with the triple start, you're not buying 4 different sizes with those things. They're so expensive. So so they're buying certain things and making certain sizes. But also on the seller side, I'm curious, are people buying the 13s more, or 14, or I don't know. Ralph's asking, can you use any bushings to turn between centers? No, you want to use the turn between centers. However, hold on, don't get excited yet. Technically, the technical answer is no. Okay, so, and I'm going to show you real quick. That's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, you could maybe get away with it, but I'm going to show you why that's not really the greatest way to go. If I can find some regular bushings here. So the problem you've got is, and I'm not going to dismount all this stuff. I'm just going to pull out a live center. So you've got your center, and it's got a 60-degree cone on it. And so this is a live center for the tailstock, but same goes on the drive side for your dead center. The problem is these standard bushings they're just a 90-degree, there's just a hole there. So this angle on the live center really doesn't match up well, and it's just not like as centered. It's just not a really good connection. You could probably get away with it, but I don't recommend it, because it can actually damage your live center, because it's just basically hitting a 90-degree angle. However, so you don't want to just pull out some bushings and slap them on your centers, and I have no clue where I pulled these bushings from. But what you can do, and this is like literally, this is the greatest invention ever. So Brian over at TBC Bushings sells adapters, and this is the greatest thing ever. Literally, I'm classifying this as a game changer. Okay, so this is one of Brian's adapter bushings. It's got your, let me pull out the center. It's got your, I'm going to pull out a drive, or dead center for this one. Let's see if I can see this. So it's got the 60-degree angle on the outside there, so your centers match up to it. And what this post size is like it fits perfectly into your standard. This is a standard bushing. This is the adapter. This goes into your standard bushing, and the adapter's got the 60-degree cone, so you're saved. You can literally use all of the bushings that you've already got that are standard and switch to turning between centers. The only thing I will say, what I recommend people do, I don't recommend, if you've got a bunch of bushings, standard bushings, I mean, you're not going to go out and replace every single set of bushings that you have. However, when you add another link in the chain, part of the idea turning between centers is you want to get it as running as true as possible. And so the less connections between the blank and the centers and all that stuff, the more accurate it's going to turn. So you start adding this adapter, and it's negligible really, but there's another link in the chain that can add to a little bit of, where it's not perfectly, whatever, true. So what I recommend people do is, if you've got certain pens that you make a ton of, go out and get the TBC bushings for them. That way you're just putting the TBC bushing directly into your blank, and you're getting, again, that's going to be the most accurate, or whatever you want to call it, turn. But for all the rest of them, you're not, again, I don't recommend that you go out and replace every single bushing that you own. I mean, I'm not gonna, So for the less used bushings, just use those adapters, and they're perfect. So tbcbushings.com. There he is. He's right there. Yeah, or if they wear out or something like that, you got to buy new ones anyway. That's a good point. I do recommend though, if there's certain two or three, for me, I turn a lot of Sierras, or those variants, is it Majestic or whatever, Wall Street, Gatsby. So I turn a lot of those. I turn a lot of cigars, and I turn a lot of juniors. Okay, so I definitely have TBC bushings for them. But there's I got all kinds of bushings in there. For different things that I've turned once or whatever, and I may do again, but I'm certainly not going to go buy a bushing for something that I've already got bushing. I'm not going to go buy a brand new TBC bushing for something I've already got a bushing for, and I don't turn much. So those adapters are just awesome, seriously. So thank you for providing that to us, Brian. Let's see here. Any other questions? Vinny. 1285 is. That's funny. I'll have to look into that, Vinny. Let's see. Piece of HDPE scrap on the end. Does double stick tape actually stick to HDPE though? Have you ever had that slip, John? Okay, sorry, I'm exponential. There we go. I couldn't think of the word. All I could think, literally the word that came to my mind was astronomical, and I'm like, that's not it. You heard someone talking about you, yeah. Yeah, Turner's has them too, and they're fine. If I'm being completely honest, that's one where I really like the TBC bushings ones. They're perfect. So, and I don't usually dissuade people, but I mean, if you're already a Turner, there's nothing wrong with the Turner's ones. I just think that the TBC bushings ones are the best that you can buy. So if you're already there and you're checking out, then fine. But if you need to pick some up, I would definitely go and support Brian. He makes really good bushings, and he's got all kinds of bushings. That's not all he makes. He makes, I don't think I'm wrong. You'll make any bushing for any kit, and you've got most of them anyway on your website. But even if you don't see it on the website, I think he'll custom make whatever you want. So it's really, really nice. Nice to be able to support small business. And again, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, these are the superior ones. Darren's in the house. How would the TBC mandrels do? I don't know. I never used so like the ones where it's like I don't know what that is exactly. I guess is that like one of the ones where, because they got a couple different types of things where excuse me, there's like a little pin that comes out, and there's two things where you're not really using light, like the live and dead centers. Is that not what you mean? There's also the ones that are like the bushing saver, what do they call them, something bushing saver or something, where it kind of like adjusts. I don't know. I never I really don't like mandrels personally. I always tended to have issues. What I always found was, I mean, I would buy a brand new one and I would not tighten the tails, because I will admit that I have a tendency to over tighten the tailstock, which bends your mandrel and then you're screwed. So I will admit that it's user error in many cases, but I mean, I've gotten brand new ones out of the box and they still mess up. And I'm like, mandrel saver, I think is what it's called. And I've even tried those, and I just, compared to TBC, and like I said, I'm not necessarily recommending that you have to buy TBC bushings to turn good pens or get good results. I never did, so I'm just like, I'm done with these things, And that's how it goes with a lot of things, with woodworking, turning, CA finishes. Some people, there's like a million different ways you can do it, and like it just doesn't work for me doing certain methods. And like once you kind of find your method, then you kind of stick with it, because it's just the way that you do things. Certain techniques work better, or tools. I'm just doing a little bit of cross grit, or it's not really grit, I guess, but there's no grit on a resin pen blank, but cross scratches. And I really think that helps. I know that it's almost like I'm doing double work, but there's two reasons for doing it. So, and when I say cross, it's like I shut the lathe off and sand it the other direction, the 90 degrees to what I was doing with the lathe on. The thing is, you're creating a cross hatch with the scratch marks, and two things, that helps with plastics to get an even, I guess I don't even know exactly understand the physics involved, or what's really going on there, but it helps to sand plastics that way. A lot of the headlight restoration kits recommend that you do that, and other things. So plastics tend to sand better if you do it that way. The reason I like to do a double, so you could also argue that, well, why don't you just sand the other direction on the next step instead of using the same? The reason I like to do double duty, and so I'll sand with 600 and then I'll stop the lathe and do the crosshatch with 600 again. If you're having any issues getting a good polish, which typically means that you're sanding, you're not getting the previous grit scratches out somehow. If you're running into any of those kind of problems, or it's like you really need to get this thing polished perfect, having the 600 grit scratches going sideways and then going on to the next grit with the lathe on, the game is you want to take out the previous grit scratches, right? So what I find is, if I so I've been sanding this for a little while, right? With this is whatever the next step. Let's just call it 800 grit. That's what I consider it. What I can do is I can stop the lathe, and if you can get out whatever you need to try and really see those scratches. If you see sideways scratches still, then you need to keep sanding. You haven't gotten all the previous grit scratches out. So it gives you a little bit of a guideline as you're sanding to make sure that you've done enough on this grit and you can move on. And so then, you know, I'll stop the lathe with that grit and then do the side scratches, sideways ones, and then move on to the next grit, and then, you know, same thing. Now, typically you don't need to stop and do all that stuff. I really kind of almost recommend not doing that unless it's like absolutely, you know, like you absolutely have to get this thing perfect, or, you know, whatever. Eventually, or if you're just beginning, it's good to kind of understand like how much time and, you know, get an idea of like how much do I need to do. But I think for most people, you don't really need to stop and look at all, you know, your scratch marks in between every single grit and do it every time. But it is helpful. It lets you do that if you need to. Sanding is just going to become a tedious process, and like you're going to probably learn to hate it if you're having to stop and look at your grits every single time, every time. Eventually you should get to the point where you're like, okay, that's good, move on. But I still recommend it. That's kind of a secondary thing. I still recommend it because with the same grit even, just because it tends to work the best. The other thing is you're kind of applying slightly different pressure. So if you just did, you know, with the lathe on with one grit and then skip to the next one and only did that hand pressure, you may be kind of sanding a little bit harder possibly, or softer, or I like doing both personally, just because it kind of gives it two different types of sanding even. I kind of find that I think that I have different pressure when the lathe is off versus when it's on. All right, so, and I think today, what I'm going to do is we're going to go actually up through, I kind of like doing on these guys, because I've got threads and all the stuff going on that are exposed. I actually kind of like just going through the grits rather than going to magic juice right away. I go back and forth, and I honestly I buff them too. So, but today I want to just kind of go up through the grits of the Zona paper. So let me find, I got blue, what's next? I'm gonna look on my little cheat sheet. I usually go to magic juice on most of my kit pen, well, all of the kit pens pretty much. But let's see, green, gray, oh, blue, pink. There it is, blue, pink, turquoise, okay. Here's a blue piece. Let's see, did I miss anything here? TBC mandrels. All right, drive center and a live center. Okay, yeah, so it's the ones with the little stubby things. Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have any mandrel on both the head and mandrel? Anybody use those? Oh, okay, yeah. So Darren, Jennifer's asking the question. Can I ask what the thread pitch does? What thread pitch does everybody use on their 13 taps? Thread pitch. I'm not sure what you mean by that. By 1. I'm not sure if I know what the question is, or I don't know what my answer is. I use whatever I bought. I don't know. And my section threads are generally for 13 and what's the question again? Hold on. 13. I'm 13. 4. Is it like 13 or 14? Is that what you're asking? I use the 10 millimeter section. So like in the body, is that what we're talking about? To connect the section? I use a 10 by 1 for both 12, no, well, 13 and 14. 12, you're gonna have to go down to 9, I believe, on the body, or, you know, like the section. And then 15, you might even go up. I mean, you could use a 10. It may look a little bit kind of dinky. I've never made a 15, so I'm not sure, but those things get pretty thick. And it may just kind of look kind of a little bit off. I don't even know if that was your question, but I think I've heard people that make pens and sell them and all that stuff say that I think for 15s they go up. And maybe there's even 16s, I don't know. But I think you're probably going to want to go up in size on that if you get into the big boys. This thing's looking pretty good. I don't know if I don't think I'm gonna need to sand the inside of this. I think there was enough. I was actually kind of going for semi-translucent on this, but I don't think I'm gonna need to. I don't think I got it as translucent as I thought. Let's see, so 13. Let me scroll down here. 10 by 1. $13 by 1. Oh, for single star. So I use a triple. I don't really know what I gotta be. Oh, I can pull it out, I guess. It probably says on it. Pretty sure I just got it from Turner's Warehouse, whatever the 13 whatever the 13 millimeter thing is. Let's see here. See if I can read this thing. I'm gonna have to use my glasses. I'm gonna turn the light up too. I don't know how I was even seeing anything before. This one's a 14 by 0.8 triple lead, I think is what they really technically call these. And then my 13 is a 13 by 0.8 also. So yeah, pitch distance. Yeah, I never really paid attention to it because they just come in a set when I buy it from, you know, all the ones that I bought. I just bought the set, and it, like, really, I don't think it matters. Am I am I wrong in saying that? Like on the triples, you're gonna it's not like there's options as far as I know. Like you're gonna get whatever they have, kind of thing. With the triples, you could, but other than that, I mean, you could, as long as the tap and die match, it doesn't really matter what you use, as long as, like, you know, the size is what you wanted, you know. So maybe that helps even more. Anita's here. What's up? Yeah, this thing's polishing pretty good. I'm literally yakking more than I'm sanding at this point, but sanding all the while, so it is looking pretty good. And, you know, I mean, it probably goes without saying. I mean, the longer you sand on each grit, the better it's going to look, because you're just getting all those previous grit scratches out. But, you know, you don't want to sit there for 30 minutes like I'm doing and typically not necessary to do all that for that long. This thing's looking pretty good. So, and actually, so, here's the point of why we made this pen. How did this blank turn out? And the interesting thing is, so this was, let's go back to I know it's been like 2 weeks already. When I made, we were doing the 50-50, the half and half blanks. And the reason I chose this blank, this wasn't one that we actually poured on the stream. This is one of the ones that I went back after because I needed to pour more for the pen blank club. But what I did was I switched them. So on the stream, the purple and copper, the way that I poured those was like a 50-50 up and down. So I poured a bunch of, I don't know which one I did first, whatever, it doesn't matter. I poured the purple first, let's say, and then, in the tube, halfway up the tube, and then poured the copper on top of that, right? So it was like 50-50 stacked top to bottom in the blank. And then for the other ones, which were pink and silver, I poured them with cups side to side, like at the same time. So it's coming down the tube and filling it side by side, 50-50. And when I did that, we were looking at them and I was like, I don't know. The outsides, there was a lot more, it wasn't what I would call like it didn't look totally uniform where I got it 50-50. It looked like it splashed together more. And so when I went back, I flip-flopped them. So on this one, I poured it again with, 2 cups at the same time, side by side. And it looked like there was a lot more mixing up going on. But at least on this part of the blank, I mean, this is pretty 50-50. I mean, there's a few little areas where there's some copper here and there. But, I mean, this side is copper. This side's pretty purple, right? So we'll have to see how the cap looks. I would say that the bottom of the, when we were pouring those, initially, the bottom of the tube, the bottom of the pour, I would say that that's going to be more likely to be more kind of mixed up. You've got gravity adding to like the velocity of, how fast that stuff's like falling. It's falling farther. And when you're starting, and this would actually depend on which blank, I don't know if this was the first one that I poured versus the sixth or fourth or, whichever way it went. But, we take the temperature of the resin and we start pouring at, I think I probably started pouring at like 100 maybe, I don't know, whatever the temperature was. I started pouring at some temperature. But as I'm going, as time ticks on and the resin's, heating up more and more and thickening up, in the case of the side-by-side blanks, the first one that I do is probably going to be more mixed up because it's like thinner viscosity than the last. But also the top of each blank is probably going to be less, like more 50-50, more kind of not mixing together than the bottom of the tube. When it came to the 50-50 blanks, they all seemed to be pretty good, but in that case also, we poured the second layer on, and you got 2 advantages in that case where that's the second round, so it's like longer, past the point that you started pouring, so it's thicker, and you've got less, it's not as deep that it's pouring into the tube really. And we kind of poured it down the edges to kind of slow that process and poured it slow. So think about that. If you're trying to do things like this, where you're trying to not mix things up, the bottom of the blank is most likely going to be more like, I don't want to use the word bleed, really. It's not necessarily going to bleed together, but you know what I mean. Like it's going to mix together a little bit more probably at the bottom. And then the other thing about these ones, they're bespoke, so they're 8.5 inch tall. So you're going to get less of an issue pouring, 5 or 6 inch, whatever, shorter blanks basically, because gravity's not as strong. You're not pouring as deep, but we'll see. I don't know if this was the bottom of the tube or the top of the tube. So we'll see what the cap looks like. You know, if that one's like more mixed up, I would assume that that was the way that I cut it. I cut the cap out of the bottom part of the blank. And again, I don't know if this is number 1 or number, 6 or whatever, because I filled one at a time, one tube, one hole at a time. Hopefully that made sense. It's very technical, but sometimes a lot of this stuff. So hopefully most of you guys know, and there's probably some newbies in the chat. I go into kind of depth and like really nerd out on, I mean, you could maybe just call it stupid things, I get kind of nerdy on things, and I want to make it clear that most of these nerdy topics and things that I discuss, to get decent looking blanks, if you're new to casting, you don't need to know every little minor detail that I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're really going for a very specific thing. That's why I nerd out and really go deep on some of these topics, because it can get really frustrating if you're going for a certain look and you don't understand some of the technical things, like the nerdy aspects of this. You can just be pouring blank after blank after blank, and you're just like, oh, it's not working. So that's why I share that. But just, if you're kind of new to this stuff or whatever, a lot of that doesn't really matter if you're just looking to kind of pour some blanks together. The basics are all you really need to understand to get decent results. You don't need to know that, like, fumble through like, well, I poured temperature and the 6th one's going to be different. That starts to get really complicated and confusing and just annoying, especially I think to beginners. So just take note of it and okay, I kind of understand that, but it doesn't matter as much as the basics when you're getting started. I just figure if I'm going to show you how to do half and half blanks, we may as well discuss some of the nuances too. All right, so this is the final step here, and I actually go one step further. I really like using the ring bling or step 6 if you've got magic juice already. Step 6 is good if you're not a magic juice user, you don't have it, and you tend to do, you'd prefer to just do the polishing papers, Zona or Micromesh or whatever you do, even if you buff. I would recommend going to Turner's Warehouse and picking up their ring bling. Like I said, if you've already got magic juice, I think the number 6 is probably kind of the same thing, but the ring bling is like a final polish, think of it if you're into like car polishing, think of it like a scratch remover kind of thing, or like the spider web remover, that final super high polish. What it's going to do, I don't know, I haven't talked to Chad, or and he probably wouldn't necessarily tell me, but I imagine that it's got, the ring bling probably has some of the anti-static properties to it. A lot of those things, those final steps will also give you a little bit of like that anti-static. But I just find that even after this like whatever ridiculous micron level, white Zona paper, if I hit it with some ring bling, I get a better polish. So, I mean, bare minimum, that's the point. But I do think it also even has some other advantages with the ring bling or the step 6. And I'm almost certain that that's got like an anti-static type of, compound element to it, whatever. Because the feel of the blank is silky smooth, and you don't really have as much of that static and all that junk I totally forgot to cut this thing off. We're gonna have to do a little bit more polishing. I wasn't paying attention. This is what I get for talking. But I am gonna hit this. Well, I'm gonna hold off because I need to turn off the end of this thing, and then we're going to have to do a little bit more polishing to finish up that end. I was going to cut it off before I started polishing. I don't know how this happens to me. Just dry off the gloves a little bit there. So I'm going to turn on the dust collector. Pull out the detail. I like to use a little mini detailer guy. And I need to mark, I like to go about 3.5 inches on my, on the bodies of these guys. Doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere in that range. And again, keep in mind, I first hit this with a center drill, right? So just make sure that you're not, that you're cutting off the right amount. Also make sure that you're not cutting too much off, or, cutting it too short and you cut into your drill hole in the middle of the blank. All right, we'll get this done eventually here. I lost my mark. I think it's right there. And I actually like to switch over to their, I don't know what this one's called, the CI7. It's got the super sharp point. And when I got this little bit hanging off, I like to use the super sharp point because it just doesn't like vibrate as much. It's just kind of cleaner and smoother. Definitely don't need that, but I have it, so I use it. Get the tailstock out of the way here. Speed this up, and then we'll just could have cut that a lot cleaner. All right. Now we can just kind of clean up. I think I did pretty good. I like the shape that I got on that, so hopefully I won't really have to come back and, it's a pretty sharp edge, so I'll have to do a little bit more sanding than I'd like to. Usually I have to kind of wrap around a little bit when I do this and just kind of touch up some little bit on the end there, but I messed up. Okay, so let me put all these little papers in the right order here. So charcoal is pink, blue, green, gray. Okay, so I still got a little bit of a dimple thing, whatever, on the end that I want to get off. So I'm going to hit it with some 600. Just kind of flatten that little nub. And also just kind of take off the sharpness of this edge on the bottom. Luckily the bottom, or whatever this is, the end, really doesn't take a lot to get polished up. Want to make sure that it's kind of smooth everywhere. Okay, let me stop it. I just want to kind of feel this. Still got a bit of an edge to it though. I don't like it being sharp. Probably could have used the tool to kind of get a little bit, but the problem is you start putting sideways pressure on it, it starts vibrating, shattering. Okay, let's see how I did. There we go, that's nice. Okay. Let's see here. John's got a question. What model lathe? I've got a Laguna 20, what is it called? 20, no, that's not right. Oh, 2436? 2436, is that what it is? I took off the front thing. I don't even know what it is. Yeah, 2436, sorry. Which is absolute overkill for turning pens. But when I bought it, I was like, I just want to get a lathe that I can do whatever I want on. And I gotta be honest, like, I was like, am I gonna want to turn pens on this? I really love turning pens on a really heavy lathe. So don't feel bad if you're like thinking about getting a gigantic lathe and you're mostly gonna turn pens on it even. I can turn whatever I want on this lathe. I can turn a baseball bat, I can turn a gigantic bowl, I can do whatever I want, right? But I don't, the only drawback, maybe, I could maybe argue is the tailstock is pretty heavy, and for especially doing bespoke pens, there's a lot of back and forth, and you know, you're changing things and doing all this stuff and moving that tailstock around a lot. It is a little heavy, and it gets a little bit annoying doing a lot of that back and forth milling and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's the only drawback that I can think of to this lathe, or you can, there's lots, you know, I'm just talking about in general, like big, heavy lathes. But at the same time, I mean, if most of what you're doing is pens and stoppers and things like that, you don't need a 2436. I think a good one, I don't know, I haven't used a lot of them. I know a lot of people love the Jets, the middies. I don't know what the numbers are on those, but I did the MIDI Laguna. I've turned on that. I like that a lot. That was pretty good. One that stands out to me, that I think is a pretty good option, gives you a good amount of, you can turn a lot of stuff on it, and it's a pretty good lathe, and I've had time on one, is the Record, the Herald, I think, or the Coronet, whatever. They're kind of like smaller, whatever. Those things are great. Like I really enjoyed that. They're small, like they don't take up I think the advantage to those, they're a compact like footprint, but they can handle, you know, a decent amount of like size. Like, you know, you can turn outboard on it. So if you wanted to get a little bit of a bigger like bowl or something like that, you can do some fairly large, you know, reasonably large things on it, but it just doesn't take up a lot of space. So 1221, yeah. Yeah, like I said, a lot of people like the Jets. Those are always like a fan favorite of everybody. I think Rycon's got a couple good models. I haven't personally turned on one, but I have used the, whatever Chad's got, that big one that they've got. That thing's awesome. I don't know, for the most part, I mean, I don't know if you were asking to, like, because you're looking at getting a different one, but for people that are thinking about it, I mean, there are a few lathes. I don't know that many that people are like, oh, that thing's terrible, stay away from it, you know. You just got to look at the features. I'm a big fan of reverse. I really like that, and I definitely really don't like changing belts. So another brand that's pretty good. I had some bad luck with some of their stuff, but I don't think it's very typical, the experience I had. But the I can't think of it. Nova lathes, those things are great. The drive units on those, the DVR drive units are amazing. My problems with them are some of the fit and finish and certain things on certain models I wasn't particularly happy with, but those work pretty well. So I haven't really seen the new Comet. I like Jake. What does Jake have? Is it the Orion? I don't even know if they make that one anymore. But they're like in the middle sizes. Like those ones seem like they're nice. Like I had a Galaxy. So before I bought this Laguna, I had a Galaxy, which is pretty similar. Like, I think it's like an 18, might be like an 1836. So it's a little bit smaller swing, but it's pretty much kind of the same category as this thing. And I just had nothing but problems. And like I said, I loved the motor, you know, like the whole headstock, you know, the drive unit, but everything else about it, like the fit and finish was terrible on that thing. Like they just were like, whatever. It's just kind of how it felt. Like they really cared about the motor and not much else on it. So I got the Laguna, and it just, like the fit and finish, Laguna does pretty well with their stuff. Like I said, even that, the problem that I had though, I could handle the fit and finish issues with that thing, but the problem was they actually pressed the wrong size bearing. When that lathe came out, they were using the wrong size bearing in their headstocks, and the spindle bearings were overheating, and they literally sent me 2 entire lathes, and they both did the same thing, and I'm like, I'm done. This is not working. So, and it came out like about a year later that the problem was, oh, we used the wrong bearings. I was like, God. So it was tough. Yeah, does anybody have Nova, one of the newer Nova Comets? I've seen them. They look pretty good for a MIDI. I've got the old one, and that's like a mini lathe, and it was great. I liked it a lot. It was like feature packed, and the price point was like cheap. It had some issues. It was not very heavy. The heavier the lathe you can get, the better you're going to be. Overall, just vibrations and things. The little minis, they just don't have enough mass to really be like super awesome, you know. But they handle, you know, when you're getting started, they're perfect for beginners. They do great. It's just when you're like trying to kind of step up the game a little bit, they're a little underweight. The mass just really isn't there on all the components and stuff. So you're a little limited at like size of projects and things like that. They usually tend to be a little vibraty. But the MIDI, you know, when you step up to those like MIDI lathes, like the 1226, I think is that what 1221, whatever. The Jet one, the Laguna, whatever it is, 12 something. You start stepping up to those and like, you know, the bed's got like mass to it, and the headstock's like heavy. You know, you just get a little bit more mass, and they're just more stable overall. Okay, so we got that done. I'm going to wipe this off, and we're going to hit it with some of the ring bling. I really like that stuff, I'm telling you, because this looks great. It's pretty polished, but this is nowhere near what I would get with Magic Juice right now. But like I said, you can just hit it with, and like you don't even have to go buy the whole set of Magic Juice. Although I do recommend you try it. You get their little. Where's my ring bling? Dang it. They have that. You know, Turner's has the sample set of Magic Juice. So if you haven't tried that stuff, it is amazing. Where's the ring bling? Dang it. Huh. hate it when the things aren't where I thought I left them, where they should be. And I can't even blame anybody. It's my fault, whatever happened here. Huh. I'm thinking it's on the floor. Huh. Well, I may have to use step 6 of the magic juice because I can't find the bling, guys. I mean, it's got to be over here somewhere. Definitely didn't like use it somewhere else. Maybe it's on my... Maybe I'm not seeing it over here somewhere. Huh. I got gremlins in the shop. They're stealing my ring bling. Shoot. I was all excited. I was going to pull out the ring bling for you guys. But no. All right, well, step 6 it is. Like I said, they work pretty much equally the same. Just gives you, oh, that was great. The cap isn't, I shook it. It was on, like the cap was on, but it wasn't like, it's not fitting right for some reason. And I just got step 6 everywhere. Jeez. Okay. All right. Oh, we're having trouble today, guys. Having some trouble. There we go. Okay. You got my bling on. Or sorry, step 6. So I'm going to use, oh, I already pulled it out. I'm an idiot. It's literally on the lathe. I already pulled the ring bling out, guys. Promise I'm not on drugs. Just losing my mind. Oh, you've got the same one as Chad? Yeah, that thing is awesome. That thing's awesome. Let's see here. Any other? Yeah. What did they have set up? Oh, they had the big... I always forget the names of all these... The record power ones. I always forget the names of them. Whatever the big record power one, they had that before, and I turned on that. That thing was great. So, you know, I honestly, like, I can't think. The only thing that I would, you know, the only things that I would kind of maybe say people, well, so like this, you know, anything that's like super cheap generally is not going to be the greatest lathe. But like even like the Harbor Freight, if you're just getting started, there's I think there's like a couple levels of the Harbor Freight one. Like their super cheap one is kind of terrible. It's not great. Most people don't like it, and I don't know if they still have that one, but they've got a little bit better one that's, you know, pretty cheap and it works. I don't know that I'd fully like endorse it, you know, but if you have the means, I would get something else probably, but I mean, even that'll work. It's just that, you know, a lot of the things are feature wise when it comes to price. And I just, the one thing that just annoys me, because I had that Comet and it was great. It did have a variable speed, but there was still belts. You still had to change the belts, you know, like there was low, medium, and high. and then variable in each one of those speeds. And so, you know, if you're turning something kind of large, you're going to really need to switch the belt. And I always found that realistically, you kind of needed to switch between high and medium. You really should for doing pens, because like the sanding is, even the low end of the high is a little bit too high for sanding pens and stuff. So that's one of the greatest things. Like I leave this on this one, the belt stays where it's at. I don't need to change it. If I was going to turn a gigantic bowl, I would, you know, switch the belt to the low position. But you can run a full-size lathe on high for just about everything until you get into like the super heavy things. So, you know, yeah, I do love turning on a full-size lathe. But even I've thought about getting a one of the record power one. What is that? The Herald? No, Herald Coronet. I always forget the name of that thing. The small one from them, because like I also don't want to be what has happened in the past, and I don't like to portray this. If somebody watches me and they see that I got a Laguna 2436, someone could assume that that's like, oh, that's what pen turners, that's what I need or something. And you absolutely do not need a 2436 to do this kind of stuff at all. It's way overkill and expensive. And you can get perfectly good work done on like any size lathe. So I was thinking, you know, it'd be kind of cool to have a smaller one. And like I said, the one thing that I don't love as much is the tailstock's it's heavy, you know, compared to like the smaller lathes. You can kind of there's quicker actions with the tailstock when you're switching things out and tapping and doing all these things and moving it. So there are some advantages to a smaller one. So I've thought about doing that even. The main thing with choosing a lathe, let's go back to the beginning. The main thing that you need to be concerned with is, what projects do I want to be able to do on this thing? What features do I want? And then go find a lathe. Because I for the most part, I think as long as it's got the features and the capacity that you want, I just don't know that many people that are like, I bought this lathe and I'm so disappointed with it. It just doesn't, I don't know. Does anybody know of, like, you guys in the chat, do you know of like any lathes that specifically stand out where somebody was just like, this sucks? Like this was a bad lathe to buy. Usually when that happens, it just doesn't meet their project requirements. It's like I was saying, you buy the mini, the really small ones, and it just doesn't have that heft to it. That would be, I'd say that is the most common thing where people are like, it's kind of flinky. To use a term that my dad uses all the time, flinky. You know, I would say be like the most common complaint, but that's not like saying that I can't use it or something like that, or it was a terrible experience. It's just like, there's better ones out there for stuff, but I don't know too many where people were just absolutely like, this is a bad lathe. It's usually they bought something that doesn't do what they want, and that's just sometimes that's just you outgrow it. When you bought it, you didn't really think you were going to get into like turning, you know, large vessels, hollow things and hollow forms and giant bowls, and you got a MIDI lathe. Okay, you know, but that's not the lathe's fault. All right, so let's see how this thing's going. Oh, that's looking really smooth. Look at that. Woo-wee! Got that thing loaded properly. It's spinning nice. Let's see here. Coronet. Yeah, that's the big one, maybe. Question, what is that red color? It's a mixture of coppers. You can go back 2 weeks ago and see the pour, and I showed you exactly what I did, but for the TLDR, I used penny copper. It was like I think a 50-50 mix, or I don't know, some sort of an amount mix of penny copper and antique copper, I believe. So the penny copper is an eye candy, and the antique is the, let me just double check. Pretty sure it's antique was the P-Town, because I don't think I have another copper. Yeah, I used antique copper from P-Town Subby, and then the penny copper from Eye Candy. And it was like a 50-50 mix. Oh God, I just ripped my notebook. Oh. I used, almost ripped the page out, jeez. Yeah, it was like a 1-to-1 ratio of penny copper to antique. It's a nice looking color, isn't it? It's turned out good. I'm very happy with it. And I think, was this a Vinny choice? The purple and copper? We kind of did it a little different with the colors last week, where I just had people kind of shout out some ideas on like full mixes, like not just like pick a color kind of thing. And I think Vinny came up with the purple and copper, and I decided to run with that one. Oh, they're getting a new lathe? Oh man, what are you guys getting? Oh, don't tease us like that. Playing with my emotions. Jeez. All right, so again, I'm gonna use the center drill just to establish that 60-degree angle, so my live center will give me good grip. It's not gonna be digging into my blank and doing all that weird stuff. Need some good action. Hold that thing nice and steady. I'm not going to have to continually, if you don't do that, if you just put the point in the back of the blank, it's going to continually dig out like a hole, basically, take out material, and you're going to have to constantly retighten the live center. Now, the problem with this is if you're pretty close on your material length, you don't really have a lot of excess, then you're probably just going to have to use the point and just deal with it and try not to keep cranking into it as much as possible. So be aware, if you use the center drill, because it's got that little point, you know, by the time you've gotten to the angled cutter part, you know, you've taken out, you know, you're going to be losing like a 1/4 inch of material on the end, so that you're going to have to cut off to get rid of that little hole. So just, you know, choose wisely. But if you've got enough material, I definitely recommend just using the center drill. It's gonna just be better in general. All right, so I'll stop talking. Let's start turning. I'm actually going to lose the gloves. I don't have any safety concerns wearing nitrile gloves turning. The problem that I have is they tend to get like kind of hang up on the tool rest, and I've gotten like weird funky cuts because I don't have like a smooth movement. Even if my skin is, you know, I'm a little bit kind of like sweaty, still a little bit kind of sticky, but so the nice thing about a 14mm thread for the cap anyway, there's not a lot of material to take off, so the cap turning goes pretty quickly. And realistically, I can pretty much use the mandrel. You know, that pretty much is my gauge. It's like a bushing. Let me just double check, because I haven't turned a lot on with these. I'm just going to compare kind of quickly to my to my notes here. Yeah. So that's 16.5 or so. And I usually go about 17 to 17 and a half on my cap. So let's see where we're at here. That might be where I'm at. A little bit more than that. So and then I just kind of angle it down a little bit. Taper it, I should say. All right, let's get a couple measurements, see where we're at. I'm pretty fat in the center, I think. That's perfect. And kind of come out a little bit. So let's try and kind of clean this up a little bit here. Get a little bit more of the taper effect that I want. Clean that up. All right, so let's take a little measurement here. I usually go a little more than 2.5. I'm actually going to mark it right now just so I can put this scale away. It's somewhere in there. The other thing, I find that the cap is a little bit more stable, and so I can, because it's a little bit shorter, I want to find out what my dimension, the diameter is here as well. Let me take a little bit more off down at the end. And then looks like I might have a little bit of lumpiness going on in the middle here. Yeah. A little bit of lumpy. I don't want lumpy potatoes. Okay. Cap time. So this will give us a little bit more of an indication if we need to, you know, obviously, so on the body, it's not see-through. Like, I mean, there's nowhere that I can see through. So that'll give you, you know, this will give you an indication of I can't even pronounce the name of this purple. But you know the coppers that are in there. This purple was the common Budokai, whatever. I'm going to show it to you guys. So this is the purple that we used, and you can go back and look at that that stream from a couple weeks ago and see how much of this we put in. And that's obviously, if you wanted to get it see-through, you know, more on like the translucent end of things, you'd have to reduce it for sure. You know, reduce the amount that you put in there if you wanted to get it to be more transparent. Now, we'll see on the cap though, because it tends to be thinner. No, and actually I'm going to cut off the, before I even do, I'm just going to cut the end off. I'm not worried about, this thing's really not going to vibrate or chatter. So let's pull out our scale and we'll cut that to length real quick. I can find the scale. Somewhere in that region. Doesn't have to be perfect, really. And then we'll pull out our detailer. And then, like I said, the other, whatever the other detailer is, I like that fine point. Get the tailstock out of the way. That one turned nicely off. Won't have as much cleanup on this one. And I got a little bit of that round over already, so I don't have to spend as much time sanding that either, because I was smart this time. All right, so we got a cap, guys. We got a cap. Turn the dust collector off. Building anticipation. That's fun. Mike's here. How's it going? You didn't miss much. We did the body. I'll show you the body. I didn't even really screw anything up. I just talked way too much. That thing's looking pretty shiny. So you see how nice and glossy that is? I should have maybe given you a little bit more of a shot. The ring bling, so I was saying that I went through the Zona papers this time. A lot of times I'll do magic juice, or, you know, like literally sometimes I'll even buff. I don't really use buffing on the kit pens. The magic juice, that whole process, it just works so perfect. Sometimes on these, I'll hit it with the buffer. Sometimes I'll do magic juice, and then sometimes I like to just go through the Zona papers. But I like to finish off with either the ring bling from Turner's Warehouse. So what I was saying is, if you don't use magic juice, you don't have that stuff, then I would recommend checking out the ring bling. That's like a kind of a final polish, like a super high polish. And I like to just finish off with that. It just adds a little bit more gloss to the pen than I typically get with just using this white stuff, the Zona only. If you are a magic juice user, just swap out. I mean, you can go get the ring bling too if you want, but I think the step 6 does the same job. It'll work fine too. So either way, it's a nice little touch. I just find it brings out just a little bit more gloss than the Zona paper does on its own. And I think that both of them have a little bit of like it adds a little anti-static cleaning process. I don't know. It seems like it feels better in my hand for some reason after I use that stuff too, compared to just using the Zona. I got a few tool marks. I'm going to do a little bit extra work here with the 600 here. Yeah, the colors were good. So I didn't see a response. I don't know if Vinny's still here. I think Vinny picked these colors during the stream. I think because I asked for just people to throw out some different color combo recommendations, and I'll just pick, choose. That's choose and pick all thrown into one. I'll pick one that ones that I like, and I like the idea of this purple and I had been wanting to use that whatever W word purple from eye candy. I just got that when I was down at Turner's Warehouse. I was like, this looks nice. I'll have some of that. So again, I mentioned that I could feel some, there were some more tool marks than I would love to have, off the tool. So anytime that's the case, I think that the first step, really all the steps are important, but if you don't get all the tool marks and little grooves and things out and surface imperfections out on the first step of your sanding, it's never going to be, there's nothing that you can do down the road to make it better. You're going to see these things. So the first step is kind of one of the most important. Let's just say one of the most important. A lot of people always say that the first and last step are, but I think the first step is probably the most important sanding step. If you're going for gloss, for sure, you need to establish a nice flat, perfectly flat surface. So I'll spend a couple seconds longer making sure that I get this thing how I want it. And then as you go, all you have to worry about then is just taking out the previous grit scratches. That's the job. But you can't really rely on those higher grits to take out tool marks. You got to use your initial sanding to really smooth everything out and get it perfect. Okay, I think that's probably pretty good. Okay, step 1 accomplished. Just gonna wipe this off. Head on to the green Zona. Let's see here. Okay, that's probably pretty good. A little side to side. So one thing that I'm noticing right off the bat, so we were talking about the pour, the whole point was to get the 50-50 look. And when I pulled these out, the issue that I had was the taller, especially like the taller blanks. These were 8.5 inch tall, or whatever, 9 inch tall blanks. And just kind of looking at the blanks, it seemed like there could have been a little bit more commingling than I was really hoping for. But I was using kind of a new method. So far, and I want to say that even on the tall blanks, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure if I've used the split cup on 8.5 inch tall blanks yet. But pretty much every time, as long as I get the temperature right, I guess I want to make sure that I asterisk that. You do need to get the temperature. You got to dial the temperature and pour at the right temperature when you're doing the 50-50, even with the split cup, because if it's too thin, if it hasn't thickened up enough, it can move a lot more, even on a 6 inch tall blank, the shorter ones, or 5 or 6, whatever. So you definitely need to get the temperature dialed in. You're going to want to go a little higher than you normally do with your temperature when you start pouring. But the split cup always seemed to work really well, doing the pouring at the same time, side by side, 50-50s. What I did this time was just two cups, which, I mean, is effectively kind of this. I mean, it's not that much different. You know, there's not a lot changing. The one thing that I will say is doing it carefully, you know, especially the taller the blank, the longer you got to sit there with two cups in your hand, the more you're, it gets a little bit like tedious, you know, tiresome. You're kind of, it's a little easier, I think, with just the split cup method. But I'd always gotten pretty good results doing split cup. So I thought, let's just see, you know, because I know there's a lot of people that don't have a 3D printer or, you know, whatever. You just want to do it once and don't have to print out a split cup or any of that. Let's see if cups will work. And I was a little bit like, I don't know. The outsides of the blanks looked a little bit more mixed up than I was hoping for. But as you can see, this thing is pretty 50-50. You know, there's a little bit of copper here and there. You're not going to get it necessarily perfect, but I mean, this is all copper. This is mostly purple. So don't even know that you need to mess around with split cups if you know. I think it's better. I think it's a little easier to manage. And we talked about it on the stream. I think the hard, you know, 3D printed split cup is a better option if you're trying to do this than the silicone squishy ones on Amazon or wherever. It's just going to be a little bit easier with the rigid cup. But I mean, these results are indicating, I don't know that you really need to mess with it necessarily if this is what you're going after. The one thing that I don't know for certain, and we, you know, earlier today we talked about it when we were doing the body. The one thing that I'm not sure is what number blank. So I poured, you know, one blank at a time, one tube. It's not like normally when I'm pouring blanks, I'm kind of pouring a little bit in each one, a little bit, and we're going back and forth, right? So you're kind of doing all of them and it's going up and, you know, filling over time. And the resin is heating up more on the tops, like it's thicker at the top of all the blanks basically. But in this case, because I was doing it one at a time, technically the first one that I do may be more mixed up than the last one, let's say. You know, and so again, it's a matter of the timing with the temperature and all that stuff. You should be able to kind of account for that. But I don't know what number this blank was in that series. In the mold when I poured this first, last, middle. I think I picked one out that looked more mixed up than some of the other ones even. So this could have been the first one, and it still turned out pretty darn good. And for all you Pen Blank Club folks, these are, you know, you guys will be getting these. Now, there are 4 different variants because I did the ones on the stream where we did pink and silver top and bottom. And no, pink and silver side by side on the stream. And we did copper and purple top and bottom. And then I came back and poured, obviously, this one's one of the copper purple side by side. And I did some pink top and bottoms. So you'll get one of 4, and they're all the bespoke length. I'm curious to see what you guys, what results you get. The nice thing is, I mean, even if they don't turn out perfectly side by side, or whatever, it's a little bit more mixed up than we were hoping. I don't think it's going to look bad. It's just not exactly what I was going for. So let's see. Question from John. What RPM? I'm at like 900. I don't know. I recommend for this kind of stuff, definitely wet. You don't want to be dry sanding, so that's like the assumption. But somewhere under 1,000, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 is probably a good range for wet sanding resin blanks. You get too much higher than that, and one of the things that actually happens, and I don't know if people really think about this, but you got water on there, you got your sandpaper, and if it's going 3,000 RPMs, the sandpaper is actually, because of the speed and everything, it's actually being lifted off the surface a little bit. It's like hydroplaning on a car. So that's why, like slower speeds, like ideally I would probably say 750 is a really good number. Somewhere around there is probably like the ideal number for wet sanding resin blanks. Is 900 going to be a problem? No, probably not. But you're just guaranteed not to have that kind of hydroplaning thing going on. I don't think I stopped and did the sideways thing, but I'm thinking about stuff. Is there another one? Do I recommend? Yeah, I definitely, like I said, not fast. The slower you go, the better you're going to be. I do think there's maybe diminishing returns on slowness, though. You start getting, below 500, and it's not really fast enough, I don't think, for most things. But we're talking pens, okay? So when you start getting into larger diameter things, then those numbers change, okay? But for very small diameter things, yeah, pens, 500 to 1,000 is good. Yeah, if water's slinging off the thing, that's a good indication. That's actually probably the best indication. Slow it down a little bit, and like you almost probably don't even. That's probably like the best way to explain it. Because some people don't have like necessarily like a digital readout. If it's slinging water, you're going too fast. Slow it down. But there's no advantage necessarily, I don't think, to going, in that range faster. I might even revise that to be like 600 to 1,000. I don't know. What does 500 look like? I'm trying to get there. All right, so this is like, well, 520. That's fine. That's fine. 600 is a little better. Yeah, I would probably say somewhere between 600 and 1,000. Okay, I think that's good. Let's ring bling it. First, I'm going to wipe it off, and I like to. I kind of caught myself. I'm always like kind of thinking about. Sometimes you end up with these like random scratches in the end when you're polishing plastics, and I went through and I was thinking about like using plastic polish and applying it with like paper towels, and I think for the most part that's not the biggest deal. I think where I would run into issues is wiping off the blank. Like I'd just have the lathe spinning and I would grab myself a paper towel and just wipe it off. And I think that, but especially by the time you get to like the final step, if you come back with a dry piece of paper towel and just wipe it off, you're going to be putting scratches right back into it. So I recommend using a microfiber to like I just did. Turn the lathe off before you do this. Turn the lathe off and just use a nice microfiber. They won't scratch anything. They're non-scratch. Get all that moisture off. So if you're drying things off and I think it's especially once you start getting into those really high levels, then you know don't just pull out a piece of paper towel, and I think you're going to be scratching. I don't know what the grit level is. I'd really like to do some sort of an experiment to figure out, like, and I'm sure it's not uniform, but some idea of like what is the grit level of a, you know, just like a white paper towel. It'd be kind of an interesting thing to know. And so again, this is Ring Bling from Turner's Warehouse, another alternative. There's lots. I mean, you could use any kind of like a final, you know, swirl remover type of thing if you've got some of that in your garage. If you got magic juice on hand, then the number 6 step, same thing. But the Ring Bling it just adds a little bit more gloss, and I think it takes off a little bit of that static. I don't know that for sure, but it just seems like there's like less static on these things. And the reason, so I may not get a lot of static if I'm wet sanding with these papers, the, you know, Zona polishing papers. I will tell you right now, if you buff these things, you're going to get static for sure. On, you know, the plastic's going to be staticky, and so if you're a buffer, I would highly recommend using either step 6 or Ring Bling as a final step. It will give you if you're stopping at white diamond, especially if you're stopping at white diamond rouge, Ring Bling will get it glossier, like hands down. It'll look glossier for sure, because it's a higher grit level. But it will knock down some of that static that you get. Oh, that's nice. Definitely doesn't look see-through. I don't think I'm going to have to sand on the inside of this at all. Let's take this off. Yeah, I mean, you can't see through that. I'm kind of surprised. I don't think so anyway. Anyway. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I've got no qualms about this. Now, let's see if I actually got this thing matched up right. That's going to be the real kicker. I think that the way that I wanted to do that is I think I needed to start. So this is a triple start or triple lead thread, and I think the way the lead that I want is it starts kind of like lined up. Oh, what do you guys think? That's pretty close. Maybe a little bit off. Pretty close though. And I might actually have a little bit more room. That's about locked down right there. Not bad. Not bad. Now I do need to clean this, and I like to put it in that hypersonic or whatever ultrasonic cleaner machine. And we got the section still, so I know it's kind of going long again today. That's what you get when I start talking. You get a 3-hour stream. So you may love it, you may hate it. I don't know. That's my 3/4. Let's see here. This one is not that. Oh, that's not even the right one. Let me get my mandrels in order here. Is it a 1/4 or half, or what is this? 1/2 inch. Okay. 1/2 inch. So again, last week I blew out the threads. Somehow the threads fell off of my section. I still don't even know why. So I called an audible and I pulled out one of the New Year's blanks, or the extra part that I had from my New Year's pen. That's looking pretty good. And so we'll see how this works. These colors may not really work that well together. I'm going to pick up my little paper pieces here in order, and we'll be ready for sanding. Luckily the section goes pretty quick. Yeah, so I'll try and put a link to the ring bling. I don't know if anybody's done that yet. At Turner's Warehouse. And the magic juice, like I said, for anybody that, if you're like, oh, you know, you don't have to switch. I mean, if you're getting perfectly good results, there's no reason to like go get some other polish or something like that. But if you're like, I don't know, I could try something else. My method isn't, it's fine maybe, but maybe you want to try something else, see if you get any better results. That magic juice blew my mind. Because I was in the camp of I don't even need this, but people recommended it, wanted to see me try it out, and I tried it and I was like, this is better than the method I was doing. Easier, cheaper, faster, and better. And I was like, I mean, I can't even, there is no argument out of me. And like I said, I would, when I was buffing, there are ways you could go with a higher, you know, I would finish buffing with, because that's what I used to do is buff. But I would finish with a white diamond wheel. Sometimes I would actually, I take it back. Sometimes I would actually, I had like a swirl remover polish, but then I had to go and like mount that as a separate wheel on my other lathe. So this is adding extra steps and complications. So I could get a little bit higher gloss. However, coming straight off the white diamond, and I already explained, like I really recommend if you're buffing and ending at white diamond, then put it back on the lathe and hit it with the, you know, either the step 6 or the ring bling, and you will get a significantly glossier blank. But yeah, so, and with all the complications, like luckily I have a dedicated buffing, you know, my old lathe is my buffing machine. If you had to like completely change your lathe over to put the buffing wheels on and do all this stuff, like there is absolutely no reason to buff, like, because you just leave it in place, especially for your kit pens. Leave it in place and start using the magic juice, and it takes no time at all. It's fast, and it just works. So give it a look if you've never tried it or are thinking like, I don't know, maybe I want to try something else. All right, so let's get this thing going here. Did we miss anything here? Lines up pretty good. Yeah, like I said, then maybe a little bit. Oh, you found some microfibers on a roll. Sweet. I like it. I like that. Like I said, guys, with the microfibers though, and it almost doesn't matter. I don't think really it doesn't really matter what type. If it's a microfiber, they don't rip like paper towels. Even that thing that's on the roll, I don't think it's going to be like this. Like you're not going to be able to rip it. So, you know, be very careful. Use small bits if you're going to use it with the lathe running, because you don't want it to wrap up and catch your hand. So use small bits. Never use like a full-on towel. Like, don't put pulling out your Costco yellow microfiber and you got the lathe running. That is a recipe for disaster and danger and emergency room. So, you know, if you're just wiping stuff off, just turn the lathe off completely and do everything by hand, you know, move it by hand. But I do apply stuff with microfibers with the lathe running, but I found these little tiny doohickeys that are, you know, a non-scratch, and there's lots of different options and things out there, but I found these, and I'll actually even cut this in half first. So all I'm effectively using is just one of these half things, and I feel confident enough that even if it did somehow wrap up, it's just not going to cause a problem. I'll probably just let go. But I mean, still is a chance, okay, that I could get hurt somehow, because you just really got to watch out for things wrapping up, and that goes for hair and clothes and anything. Just be careful in there. Just remember, all the tools in your shop, they're just trying to kill you. I forget that there's a YouTube channel, Blondie Hacks. She's a machinist. And that's what she always says. The tools are trying to kill you, so just be cautious when you're in that shop. They're not your friend. Yeah, you can wash the towels too. That's nice. Now, one other plug for Turner's Warehouse. I'm actually going to turn the dust collector off because I feel like I'm screaming. Even if you've got a full set of mandrels, guys, even if you got all your mandrels all squared away, if you're using, I don't know what the Bach number, what's the Bach they have? They only have 2, and I'm a little bit, I wish they had a couple more sizes. They got a Yovo 6 and a Bach, I don't even know what it is. There's something for a Bach. It's a 7.9 by 6, M 7.9 by 6. I don't do Bach. But I wish they'd come out with a Yovo 5 and a couple other options. But if you're using whatever size they have for these mandrels, definitely check out their section mandrels. These things are awesome. You got tailstock support. You got a bar going all the way through it, supporting the blank. You're going to get less when you're turning. These are the most susceptible to blowing up or problems happening. And I firmly believe most of that is because most people are they're hanging off the end of the lathe, and you get chatter and they tend to catch. If you've got tailstock support and you've got a rod going all the way through, you are way better off. Plus, the other end of this thing, and I love this mandrel. The other end is also threaded, so you can flip it, put your section threads in there, and sand and polish the other end on the same mandrel. It is fabulous. This thing, like I said, even if you've got your mandrel squared away, this is one that you might look into. I'm just going to say it like that. Bach 6, yeah. Yeah, they're just, because I used to use my own mandrel the main thing, I was advocating for the flip thing, because I would do that anyway. I made my own mandrel, but then I got to do all this messing around, and this mandrel is not great. Let's just say that. But I would also even use this to try and get some tailstock support. I would wind this on my section, and then I would bring my tailstock up. But it was such a clunky, stupid way of doing it. When they came out with this, I was like, oh, you guys solved the problem. I definitely like metal mandrels a lot better than my homemade junk blank mandrel. All right, now I got to double check. I got specific measurements that I usually do for my sections. And I'm still I knew what I was doing with my old mandrels. And I'm pretty sure this is the same, but I want to double check what I think I use this as a kind of a guide. Yeah, this one's a little thinner, so I got to be a little bit careful. That one's a little thinner than it was. Okay, so, I mean, I could probably use that as a guide, but I want to be a little higher than the diameter of that mandrel. Little wider. Let's just see where we're at right here. Yeah, it's still very wide. Any other questions? Safety third. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's certain times where, you might need to increase risk to get the job done. Sometimes, depending on your tolerance level of risk and all that stuff and what you're trying to do. But there's so many cases where you just don't need to do things dangerously. And like, it's just silly because if you get hurt, think about it, you know, you lose shop time and you may have pretty high medical bills. You may not be able to work, you know, who knows? There's lots of lots of downside to getting hurt. And not any upside that I know of. So unless you're trying to get out of work. So if you can just adjust the way you do things, try to eliminate that risk, then you don't have to worry about that. There's so many other ways to get hurt. Even if you're doing things safe, why take the risky route? My middle name is Danger. All right, let's see where we're at. I like to go about 12 and a half or so. And still wide. Still wide. Side's getting pretty close. Man, so it just dumped 4 feet of snow last week, and then this week it rains, and like we lost all of it. Like it's like gone. Overall, between the two storms, I'd say that there's actually less snow than than before the 4-foot storm now. I was like, that's not awesome. So the ski resorts might actually end up having to shut down early this year now. Because we got, I mean, I'm talking rain at like 10,000 feet. It was ridiculous. Sad. So it looks like I'm going to have to come down a little bit on that side. It's hard to line this thing up. Yeah. Just like a couple shaves and we'll be at the right size on the ends. If I don't get this right, if I'm a little too wide, and I think honestly you could probably just use the mandrel and that would probably be fine. But I kind of figured out what I like for the dimensions, and so it's just a little bit wider than the mandrel actually is. But you need to know what the cap diameter, like it's going to have to fit in the cap. So there is a number that you have to be below on these things. And I like to just kind of give a little cove to these guys. Okay, I think that's probably pretty good. I'm going to double check my end sizes, make sure they're right. Yep. Yep, perfect. Okay. Now, this has glitter in it, and I may have, I'm just going to try and polish this, but I have a feeling that to get this correct, I think I'm probably going to have to put like some sort of a CA finish on top. We'll see. I can always chuck it back up and put a CA finish on later. But for today, let's just get it polished. We'll get a, it'll be plenty shiny, but there's some, like the larger chunks of glitter, like there's one, like one right there. As long as it's below the surface of the resin, it'll polish up, but you can't polish glitter, basically. It's like I don't know what it is, but, so if the glitter itself is on the surface, it's not going to look shiny unless you cover it with something else. So just be aware of that with glitter blanks. Sometimes the more glitter that's in it, the more likely you're probably going to have to put a finish on top for the glitter to really like shine, and do what it's supposed to do. Typically, we're talking like larger glitter chunks though. So let's see here. Need to head out. All right, Mark. Texas Roadhouse, that's fun. Enjoy the dinner and have a great week. Slow this guy down. Like I said, the nice thing about this this mandrel is you can, and I mean realistically, so okay, I'm gonna stop this right now. I'm gonna just stop this. And really, the way to do this is to flip it off the bat, because the problem is I'm sanding this, but you got exposed threads. And that's what I never liked about this whole this setup. So right off the bat, flip it when it's time to sand this thing. And you've closed off the threads. The threads are not exposed. You're not going to sand them because you can't even touch them, right? So really the way to do it is just flip it when it's time to sand and go this way. Then there's no problems whatsoever. And you can get to the front because you really don't want to end. This is a very sharp edge. Like it needs to almost be shaped. Like you could almost argue to pull out the tool on this, but I don't want to mess with that because sections are already the more volatile thing to turn in the first place. And after explaining the where you get the problem is when this thing's just kind of hanging off the end, and you've already turned it down really far. I don't want to really put a tool to this thing, and you don't really need to. You can sand it, but this is the magic of that thing, the mandrel. Sand mode, turn mode. Look at that. Look at that action. Okay, that ought to be good enough, I think. And again, if I was going to be doing that, this starts to get a little dangerous with those threads hanging out the other way, A lot more comfortable when the threads are inside the mandrel. Now, I probably wouldn't recommend turning this way. Those threads, there's not a lot of meat holding it together. You already saw that I snapped one off somehow. I don't even know how that happened. Without even turning or doing, it had nothing, I don't know what was going on with that. So that was just drilling somehow. I lost the thread. So I don't think I'd turn this way, but I think for sanding, you shouldn't really be putting a lot of pressure on this thing in the first place. So you should be good sanding it like this. All right, let's go through, move up to the green. Let's see here. I haven't been to a Texas Roadhouse. I don't, maybe I have. Maybe there's one in Reno. There might be one in Reno. I've eaten there like once or twice. Now, one thing that I will say is you could make the argument, if you want to be absolutely safe with this, you could make the argument for sanding the majority of this thing with it the original way, the way that I had it originally when I was turning it, because you definitely do have more stability. You've got the rod going all the way through the blank and the tailstock's holding it there, so you're really not putting much pressure. There's a lot more pressure, even with light pressure, you're still putting pressure on those threads with it just hanging out like this, hanging off the end. So just, you could even go through the sanding. The problem is then you got the threads exposed. So, just kind of think about that. Especially if you tend to be kind of heavy-handed sanding, then you might be better off leaving it the way it was and going through and doing your sanding, and then, just kind of touching up this far edge, afterwards, the front of this thing. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, if this section doesn't look good on this pen, I think it's going to look good on some pen. Because this thing's full of all kinds of stuff going on. Fun stuff. All right. Moving up to the blue. I think doing this squeeze method is probably a little bit less, like just pushing from the top or the bottom, you're kind of pushing pressure down. I think the squeeze thing, where you kind of wrap the paper around and just squeeze it like that, you're probably not putting as much pressure on those threads that the mounting into the section threads there. So that might be something you can employ. It would be terrible if you like snap the threads off this thing at the end. I would be not happy. Luckily, like I said, sections, out of all the components of the pen, I think the section is the least problematic because it's not that hard to replace it with something that's, even if you were using some kind of special material that for your pen that like you can't get it anywhere else or whatever, you can still just put a black one on there or something. You know, like there's some combination where it's gonna look good with the body and cap, whatever material, even if it doesn't match. So I think it'd be a lot worse if you blew up a body or something, you know, cap or something like that. In fact, like we were saying, it might be, I mean, you could even consider it a feature having a little bit of a contrasting, you know, design for the section. There is a little bit of copper in this though, in this the section blank, that I think might kind of play into that copper in the other blank. It's a little bit, maybe slightly different looking, but it might kind of match up a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see how this looks when we put it together. How the blue blanks turn out. I didn't see the blue ones. I didn't catch the SMC today. What did they do? Oh, I lost my paper. At least my dust collector didn't suck it up. I hate that. Okay, we'll do a little bit of side-to-side action. I think I'm going to get away without having to polish this, or sorry, apply a CA finish. I think it'll be okay. I think that mostly applies. So I sell some blanks that are, you know, glitter blanks specifically, and they are, I mean, they are loaded with glitter. Like the whole thing is glitter, right? Like there's so much glitter that they're pretty much opaque. And in those ones, like you cannot get away without putting a CA finish on it. They just look dull because there's so much glitter on the surface of the blank once you turn it and it won't polish. But as long as you put a CA finish over it, it looks fine. It looks then the glitter turns back to what you think, what you would expect. But I think, you know, there's not that much glitter in these things, so I think it's fine. 3 or 4 different shades of blue. That's cool. That's fun. Yeah, it's amazing. Like you know, a lot of times we're like, oh, what colors should we put together? And that's a great example of like, I mean, honestly, you can just tweak one shade, or I mean, what, you know, one hue, one color, throw it all together, and it's crazy. I have one blank in my shop that's actually a blue one, called Pool Party, and I feel the reason I call it Pool Party is to me it looks like, you know, like you look at a pool with like the sunlight where there's like different weird kind of shades going on in like a pool or lake, body of water of some sort. And it's literally just 3 different shades of blue. Like there's nothing special about it really. Besides, you know, I picked colors that I like that went well together and gives that, it kind of looks like a pool, you know. That's what I was going for. But other than that, I mean, it's 3 shades of blue, like whatever. You don't even need to get all crazy with different color matching combinations and stuff. It's cool. I can't wait to see him too. Is he gonna turn? Is he gonna turn those, or are they going in the boxes that he does, the subscriptions? All right, so one more round of ring bling here. Don't really need a whole lot on a section. Speed this guy up. Okay. And then I'll wipe it off with my other rag. Oh man, that thing looks great. Woo! Hope this matches the pen. Yeah, may not. I don't know. We'll have to see. Definitely the coppers may kind of complement each other, you know. But we'll have to see how this actually works out in the end here. And I'm gonna, before I shut off the stream, I'll get a link to the Magic Juice and the Ring Bling for you guys. If anybody's not familiar with either of them or whatever, I'll get a link to Turner's Warehouse for you, so you can pull that up. And the Zona paper also. I think, you know, a lot of people still use micro mesh, and I'm pretty sure Zona's cheaper. There's less grit levels, like pieces that you have to go through. And I mean, some people argue that it works better. So my biggest thing is I really didn't like the big pads of micro mesh. Like, I really like these papers, but they're also easily colored. I know the pads are color coded, but micro mesh also sells some paper. Like, you can get it similar 8.5 by 11 sheets, but they're all shades of gray, which doesn't make any sense. So you don't know what grit it is without writing it on there in the back. Kind of missed a little bit of the end of this thing. A little bit, it's a little dull on the edge there. Probably go back and kind of fix that. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the very edge is just, I don't know if this is coming through on camera, but it's a little dull. So let's, I'm just going to assemble this kind of quickly here. It's a little tight. Maybe. I'm just going to run, I'm going to run this through the die real quick. I actually don't think it's the, I'm just going to quickly run this through the die just to make sure that these threads are good. It was just a little tight at the end. You can always do this. Just be careful, you know. Gonna do that, and I'm gonna just quickly run the 10 by 1 into the body. Don't think those threads should be messed up at all, but it was just there's a little friction. There might be some junk in the threads, so before I assemble this and do all that, I'm just gonna quickly kind of run this through. It didn't seem like I didn't get any stuff come out, but let's see how this goes together now. Oh yeah, a little bit tight at the end, but pretty good. Okay, and let's put a nib in this guy. It's I don't know how much I love the black with this. It's okay. I'm not 100% sold. It's not the worst thing I've seen, but I don't know that I would call it the match of a lifetime. I do love the pen though. It's not bad, actually. That time taking it out, not too bad. One thing that I would maybe like a little bit more is if I could get the nib. Well, that's not too bad. So the nib is kind of lined up almost on like the between the purple and copper. Almost. It's still just a little bit offline, but one thing that would be kind of cool is to like have it just on the copper maybe, where it's kind of lined up like that, or maybe on the purple only. I do like this, if you could just kind of tweak it. I'm trying to think the best way. The way you would have to do that is take off, like this would require some surgery. I'd have to take off some material from the leading edge of this thing to adjust that. The other way you would do it is you'd have to adjust the shoulder, which definitely don't want to do that. And if you take off material on the, the leading edge of the body, it's not going to affect the cap. That has nothing to do with how this thing lines up. So you could kind of play with that if you wanted to get your nib. That's another, one more step. That's not too bad. At least you kind of get a little bit of both going there. I don't know. But if you wanted to line things up like that on a pen, then you would have to kind of play around with the... I don't think I would mess around with trying to adjust the nib itself. I think I would just leave that the way it is. You don't want to mess around with, how that lines up with the end. So I think your best bet is to just play around with the end of your body, the threads there. But you could align that section so that it kind of like, sits a certain way on the blank. And I think this will probably loosen up a little bit once I clean everything. There's probably a little bit of just junk on the threads. There's a little sticky here and there. If you still run into issues after you've done the sonic cleaner and all that, I'm going to go over to the main camera view here. Bear with me because I need to swap the cameras and it's going to hang up on me real quick. So let's see here. So we're going to turn this on. Yep, it's frozen. Switch this. Technology. Okay, so that's working. Anyway, what I was saying is, if you still run into issues where it's just not running smooth, whether it be the body and cap or even the section, because this one's there's a little stickiness to it. So a lot of times you put it in your sonic cleaner and that actually fixes everything. It's just kind of a little bit magic. If though, after cleaning and everything's all good to go, you still have some sticky, it's like the threads are a little tight, sticky feeling. A simple, and I got this trick from Jim Hines, simple, easy way to go is you can grab something like, he recommended, and mine has like dried up at this point, I think. But what he, oh shoot, I just lost all my nibs. Jesus. That was silly. That's not good. Hold on real quick. Pulling out show and tell, but I lost all my nibs. Nibs are expensive. I don't want to bend them or lose them. Okay. Oh, there's one more. Two more. Oh, man. Bear with me. It's time to put my nibs in something else where they don't fall out when I move something. Oh, that's why. The problem is these aren't engraved. I need to find a used fiber laser. Okay, so what Jim recommended was using the turtle wax rubbing compound. You can, effectively, some abrasive of some sort. You could probably use, I don't know what grit, I think I looked this up at one point. You could probably use something like Triple-E buffing rouge. Probably would be about the same. 900. I think I tried Magic Juice Step 1 and I don't think it was really coarse enough. You need something that's going to be fairly coarse, but this stuff worked really well. The problem was it like, I don't know, it seems like it dried up. I think I need more, or a new one. But this stuff works well. So what you do is you put some of this rubbing compound on the threads and then basically just screw it in, screw it out, 10, 20 times. And that's going to abrade the threads on both sides at the same time. And it'll loosen up the joint there, the threads. If you got kind of sticky threads, it should make everything a lot smoother. And I mean, you could even do this if they're just like a little bit tight. You could, if you want it to be nice and loose, you can do that. So that's one little tip that I got from Jim Hines. I'm gonna go get the link to, is this working? Yeah, link to the ring bling for you guys. Polishing compound. So again, this is for like your final step. And if you make rings, this is what they use. That's why they have it. It's kind of your final step doing the rings. But it works really well for this as well. So let me go grab the link here. This will be an affiliate link. So if you use this, you'll be helping my channel too. And it costs you nothing. I love the affiliate link thing. That's pretty cool. Here we go. There's a link to, where are we at here? Here's a link to this. So that's the ring bling. I'm also going to go grab one for the magic juice, I guess, while I'm here. If you haven't tried it out, they do have a 10 milliliter sample set, which you look at these bottles and they look tiny, but I gotta be honest, you don't use that much. So this, like even the sample set, if you don't really turn that many pens, like it's gonna last you a good amount of time. But it'll let you know if you like it. And like I said, it's the magic juice is just a 6 step. So the way that I do it, I go 600 grit sandpaper, and then I actually will go green and then gray with the Zona papers. Then I start with step 1 through 6 with the magic juice, and I mean they shine. It's the best way to polish, resin blanks that I've found. It works great for me, and most people say the same thing. This isn't just like, well, it worked for me, it might for you. Most people are happy with it. If you're a little skeptical, that's why I say try the sample thing out, see if it, and then compare to whatever you're doing now, or if what you're doing now doesn't work, I think you're going to be blown away with the magic juice. So that's, again, another affiliate link. And then I'm going to grab one for the Zona paper because, that stuff works great. You don't even need to use magic juice. Chad typically, as far as I know, Chad pretty much just uses Zona paper himself. I like the mixture. I just tend to get... I probably, once I get past the gray, I'm guessing that my problem is I tend to don't use, like, each grit I'm not using long enough. Probably I don't know, something. For some reason I get better results with Zona. I don't know why. But other people get better results using just papers, and some people get better results buffing. So it's not a one way is the best way. It's just whatever works best for you. So those are 3 links to that stuff. Now, is no, it's not a friction. It's just like a plastic polish, or like a, I don't think I would even call it plastic polish. It's like a polish, like a car polish, plastic polish, any of those types of things. Okay, so the last thing, I got a link to this week. So I think the sale ends on Tuesday. If you want to pick up Color Lab pigments, so I got the 5 colors, both sizes are on sale, 25% off. This is a big one. So it's, spring's coming up, and I thought, if people are getting into casting and doing some stuff, they might need to get some pigments. So here's the link to Color Lab pigments. And when you check out, make sure to enter code Color Lab, and I'll just so you can see the spelling of it, or whatever, the proper spelling for the code. Enter Color Lab when you check out, and you get 25% off. Like I said, either of the sizes. There's 1 and 2 ounce. And there's 5 different colors. We got navy blue, we got chicken egg blue, we got watermelon pink, we got coral, which is kind of, It's similar to watermelon, but it's like an orange variant of that. And then Army Green. So 5 colors, 25% off. Stock up while they're on sale. So there we go. Did I miss any questions? Or one of his pours was like 3 or 4? 12 blanks. That's cool. Sweet. So I think that's about it, guys. I'm pretty stoked about this pen. I'm going to do... I think it works. Yeah, okay. I'll do one more. I'll assemble. And so I would put a converter in there for the ink, but I'm going to wait to... Like I said, it's still a little bit sticky at the end. I'm hoping that the... you know, the first thing that I did was just pull out the tap, right? If you've got like, if something's funky going on, you can always just run the tap in there. You know, tap or the die, depending on what's going on. But you have to be very careful. Make sure you get it, you know, where it kind of it's not working. Take your time. You should be able to feel when it, and I'm turning it backwards, basically. Should kind of click. There it goes. Once you've got it to click, then just make sure that it's running right. And you can always just clean out the threads by running the tap in. Now, I may need to actually go, because it's starting to kind of tighten up already. And I think I need to go farther than that. So let's just see. And realistically, it's best to have a tap handle if you're going to do this. It's pretty hard to do this. If it's getting pretty tight and it's hard to hold on and do all that. So best to just grab your tap handle if you've got one and just run it down. And then at this point, so that feels like I actually cut a little bit more. So let's see. Sorry. Come back on camera. If I've got some debris. No, not really. It's just a little bit tight. I don't know. Let's see how that did. Yeah, it's still just a little bit sticky at the end there. I think cleaning it up, maybe my relief might not be deep enough on there. I don't know. But I think if I just drop this guy in the sonic bath, I think it'll be pretty good. And like I said, the way this lines up, right there, not bad. Pretty happy with this guy. So just to give you an idea, so this is a 14 millimeter. Few people kind of had questions about like how do you choose, or you know what's going on with that. So that's a 14 millimeter. And then you got this guy. This guy's got a little bit more of a ramp. I got this one is a little closer to the diameter of the threads. You know, not a huge difference necessarily, but there is a bigger step there. I could have thinned this a little bit more. I do the same, pretty much the same. Well, no, my section's a little bit thinner even. But, you know, the difference is 1 millimeter. So, I mean, kind of put that into perspective. It's not significant. 13's a pretty good size, I think, for most people. You know, for people that want a wider pen, 14 might be better. You know, but let's put the cap on and you can kind of see these side by side. I hope I messed that up. That's still not right. There we go. Put the cap on. These ones are a little bit different styles of pen, but just a little bit thinner with the 13. And like I said, the 12, you know, at that point, it gets kind of thin for me. But I kind of prefer slightly larger pens, I would say, at least looks-wise. But you can also, you know, I could have done more shaping and changed things. So even within this isn't like what you're going to get if you do a 14. You could thin out the body a little bit more. and do some different stuff, but in general, you're not going to get a whole lot thinner at this end, this point, with a 14 millimeter thread. It's you really can't get it, the body, too much thinner than that. You could get a little thinner, there's a little bit more of a step there, but that's going to be the biggest limiting factor. You could, you got a little bit more to take off if you wanted to. So hopefully that kind of helps. All right, guys, I think that's about it. So next week we'll be back in the shop and making some blanks, doing some stuff. I actually have another little kind of random side tip that I think we could do next week, as long as I get everything ready, in addition to pouring some blanks. So I got some ideas about what to do next week, a couple different things, so we'll have to see. But it should be pretty fun. So I hope everybody had a great time today. Hopefully you guys will have a great evening as well. But other than that, I think I will see you guys all next week on the next stream. Have a great night.